Good morning. Welcome to day 13. Okay. I'm going to tell you a story. I remember counseling someone. It was a woman who was really discouraged, and she was having a hard time with her marriage, and she was just saying to me, I'm so frustrated. My husband just doesn't care about spiritual things. Again, I'm always the one getting up, getting the kids ready to go to church. I'm always the one wanting to pray and say grace, and it's always on me. I'm the devotions. It's always on me. And she was so discouraged. And she was just saying, if there's anything you could do maybe to help out with that, like if you could encourage him to maybe kind of like pick it up a little bit, it would mean a lot to me. So I did that. And I started to kind of in a non-judgmental way, just, engage this guy and encourage him and say, hey man, start with baby steps. First of all, is it important to you? It's maybe even if it's not important to you, it's important to your wife. So maybe you want to do it even if it's just important to her. And my thinking was in the process, maybe it becomes important to him as well. And they grow in this together. Well, guess what happens? Can you guess what happens? You probably can. He actually does start taking these things on. And when he does start taking those things on, you guessed it, there's now this pushback. Because now it's like, hey, honey, I want you to take the reins here. And then, give me the reins back now, honey. Honey, you're doing that wrong. Why are you doing it like that? How come? No, that's not what that means. No. Why are we doing the devotions now? And you get it, right? So what I'm saying is, there's a way in which our forms of dysfunction become the ways in which we get used to functioning. And this isn't just in spiritual disciplines. This is in any manner of relating with people, right? If you have a dysfunctional way that you relate, right? That's the definition of that clinically is called like codependency, where the dysfunction becomes how we function. It's a thing, right? So today, like our big idea is Jesus offers healing. There's a healing that Jesus offers today, but there's an interesting way in which this interaction takes place. And part of it might be because we get, this person gets used to functioning in a dysfunctional way. But then there's another part of this where it's another example of Jesus truly calling us out away from ourselves to full reliance upon him. So let's read this. And then the second part is the response of the community, especially the religious community. So let's pick it up in chapter 5. We're going to read verses 1 through 18. It reads, afterward, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. And inside the city, near the sheep gate, was the pool of Bethesda with 5 covered porches and crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed. They lay on the porches. And one of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, would you like to get well? I can't, sir, the sick man said, for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. Someone else always gets in there ahead of me. Jesus told him, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. Instantly, the man was healed, and he rolled up his sleeping mat, and he began walking. But this miracle happened on the Sabbath, so the Jewish leaders, they objected. They said to the man who was cured, you can't work on the Sabbath. The law doesn't allow you to carry this sleeping mat. But he replied, the man who healed me told me, pick up your mat and walk. Who said such a thing as that, they demanded. And the man didn't know, for Jesus had disappeared into the crowd. But afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and told him, now you are well. So stop sinning, or something even worse may happen to you. Then the man went and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who had healed him. So the Jewish leaders began harassing Jesus for breaking the Sabbath rules. But Jesus replied, My Father is always working, and so am I. So the Jewish leaders tried all the harder to find a way to kill him. For he not only broke the Sabbath, he called God his Father, thereby making himself equal with God. So there's two kind of angles that I want to look at this over the next few minutes. The first is this angle of becoming comfortable functioning in our own personal dysfunction. Okay, so similar to the example I gave in the opening with the husband who's trying to exercise spiritual leadership, and now there's pushback. What are the areas in your life where you know there's dysfunction? You know that you need a healing, right? So the big idea today is Jesus is a healer. Jesus is able to heal. The question he asked, which is such an odd question, but it's a good question. What would you like me to do for you? In other words, do you want to be made well? Or do you want to remain in your dysfunction? Because even though you know it's dysfunctional and it's not a life that flourishes, it's your life, and at least you know it, and you've learned how to manage it. So, you know what? I think maybe I'm just going to stay in it. That's a spiritual question, right? The second way to look at that probing question, do you want to be made well? How can I help you today? Is Jesus once again has this beautiful way with drawing this man out, because if you look at the man's answer to the question, it's not a yes or a no. He doesn't say, actually, Jesus, I kind of want to stay in my dysfunction. I don't want to get healed, right? Or he doesn't say, yes, of course I do. What are you, stupid? I've been lame for 38 years. Think I want to be like this, right? He doesn't say either of those. What he says in verse 7, he says, I can't, sir. And that's the other part of this, which is beautiful, because there is this recognition, there's this admission of need. There is this sense in which, and The Chosen depicts this beautifully. I might try to attach the video clip for this one. Just day after day, year after year, not being able to find his way into the bubbling brook. By the way, the bubbling brook is, there's no life found in the bubbling brook, right? It's important to notice, Jesus doesn't help him get into the bubbling brook. Jesus does better than that. Jesus confronts his own need, confronts the question, do you really want to get well? And confronts the inefficacy of this religious observance of bubbling water. And he confronts all of them at once by simply commanding the man, get up and walk. And then Jesus doesn't say, this water ain't going to help you. He doesn't. He just says, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. It's a call to take a step forward in faith. And it's this interrelationship between us acknowledging fully our inefficiency, our inability to save ourselves, to rescue ourselves. In the same way this lame man of 38 years couldn't get his legs to work so he could crawl his way into the water, he's helpless. And in his helpless condition, Jesus meets him and says to him, okay, I'm here to remedy your helpless state. Physically, emotionally, psychologically, and as we'll see later in the text, spiritually. Because he says later at the end, you're well now, so stop sinning, right? The healing Jesus offered him was complete healing in every regard. But that complete healing requires participation, not in the sense that we help ourselves get saved or healed, but that we fully yield over and we truly desire such healing. This was a requirement This is why Jesus isn't asking a cruel question when he says, would you like me to heal you? Would you like to get well? Duh. Jesus is trying to draw out our true, most inward desires, because the question is, do you really want to be rescued from pornography? Do you really want to stop drinking? Do you really want to be rescued from fits of anger? Do you really want to be rescued from the inability to relate with the people you love the most? Do you really want to stop pushing away from intimate conversations with people that you really want to trust, but you just can't go there? It's a little too close. Do you want to be made well? It's a good question. It's a question I have to ask myself, and it's a question you should ask yourself. And then the second part is, if you are at that point through suffering and through waiting, where God has worked it in and through you, where you are ready and you're like, with open hands, God, I'm ready. Jesus, I need you. I'm ready. I surrender. I cry, Uncle, I need your help. Do you believe he's able to do it? And that's the power of today. Then the second piece to this is the heart of religiosity, right? Look at the other people. Look at the religious leaders. Isn't it incredible? If you think of a guy that might be there, let's call him Freddie. I don't know if his name is Freddie. If Freddie was there for 38 years, struggling, depressed, probably crying half the time, life had beaten him down. And Freddie has been rejuvenated and walking around with a mat. And instead of you erupting in celebratory praise, Freddie, look at you, Freddie, I can't believe it. Isn't God great? You've been healed. You've been delivered. They don't see it because they can't see past their religious judgmentalism, because the truth is, their calculus was the reason Freddie is paralyzed and suffering is because God's clearly punishing him because he's a vile sinner. He's one of these lawbreakers. How in the world would he be destined to this lifestyle unless he was a rotten sinner, facing some kind of judgment of God upon him? Totally dehumanizing him, right? So they don't see Freddie as this redeemed and rescued person, right? Just like the women at the well didn't see a human being. They just saw a slut, or whatever their term was, right? Didn't see a hurting woman crying out for attention and love and affection and unable to find it until she met Jesus, who made her whole. See, this is what religiosity does. Is it just sees people as filthy and it judges them. And they're unhappy with the healing, and they don't see a deliverance, they see a lawbreaker. You can't be walking around with your mat on the Sabbath, you lawbreaker, piece of garbage. These are the religious leaders. These are the ones pointing other people to the love of God. Oh, thank you so much. And then, worse than that, becomes this power struggle, this confrontation again with Jesus. Because all this guy says is, hey, I'm just doing what I was told. What do you mean you were doing what you're told? Who told you? Well, the man over there. And of course, it turns out that the man who told him to do this was Jesus. And now, instead of again going up to Jesus, Jesus, thank you for healing Freddie. Rabbi, thank you for your healing power over our friend Freddie that we care so much about. No. They kind of huddle together and go, you know what, this guy, we gotta get rid of this guy. This guy's a problem. So they tell him, they confront Jesus. The reflection points are, how do I respond to this? How do I respond to the honest question, what do you want me to do for you? Where do you need to be healed? And Do you want to be healed in that area? You see, and you can be honest with God because he already knows your heart more completely than you even know your own heart. Some of us need to pray, God, make me willing to receive the gift that you have for me. Make me more desirous to truly be healed because I really don't want to be healed in this area. I've learned to function within my dysfunction. If that's where you are today, then the prayer is, God, change my heart, create more unrest within me, which is such a scary way to pray, but it's a good way to pray. You know, when the psalmist says, search me, O God, when David cries out, search me and know my heart today. See if there be any wicked way in me. That's David giving God permission to come in and invade him and to clean up the mess. And there's a way in which Jesus' question is connected to that, right? He's not just going to invade your life without your open willingness and desire and need to say, Jesus, I need you to come in, right? I stand at the door and knock. If any man hears me knocking and opens the door, I will come in and I will have dinner with him. This is the invitation of a transformed life. Do you want to be made well today? It's a good question. And what area specifically do you need to be made well in? And then the second thing is recognize the spiritual opposition of darkness that is often found in forms of religiosity against the power of God working in and through people. Because we can get so off track and so judgmental. And it's so easy to see it around us, right? I don't know, you don't have to look very far for people to be dehumanized, right? Identify that's a power of darkness that we need to bring into the light so we could expose it so that it cannot do damage to people. So those are the two reflection points. Think about those things today. I hope that's helpful. And tomorrow we're going to pick it up again on day 14. So make it a great day today. And I'll look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.